The massive warship drifted silently through the emptiness of deep space, its dark hull barely visible against the backdrop of stars. Only its size gave it away. Nearly 2 kilometers of sleek, angular metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Lieutenant Ju Park floated outside the UES Discovery, her tether connecting her to the much smaller exploration vessel that had stumbled upon this anomaly. Through her helmet, she stared at the enormous ship with a mixture of awe and unease. "Command, are you seeing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper despite the privacy of her comm channel. "We see it, Lieutenant," Captain Minho Kang replied from the Discovery's bridge. "Any signs of life or activity?" Jiwoo pushed her maneuvering thrusters gently, moving closer to the mysterious vessel. "No, sir. It appears completely powered down. No running lights, no energy signatures, nothing. It's just floating." The ship had no visible markings, no insignia of any known space-faring nation or corporation. Its design was unlike anything in human records, too advanced, too elegant in its construction. The hull material didn't match any known alloy. "Permission to approach the potential entry point, sir?" Ju asked, eyeing what appeared to be an airlock on the ship's side. "Granted, but maintain caution." Sung-hoon, Jae-yun, "Move to support positions," Captain Minho ordered. 2 more suited figures detached from the Discovery, thrusters glowing softly as they moved to flank Jiwoo. As the 3 astronauts approached the mysterious vessel, strange patterns became visible on its hull. Not decorations, but something more functional, like circuit pathways or energy conduits etched into the material itself. "This technology," Engineer Sung-hoon Ba's voice came through the comm, filled with professional awe. "It's nothing like ours. The precision of these lines, the material composition, it shouldn't even be possible with current manufacturing capabilities." Ji Yoon, the team's xenobiologist, added, "If this is alien technology, it's far beyond the development level of any species we've encountered." Jiwoo reached the apparent airlock and examined it closely. There were no obvious controls or access panels. "How do we get in?" she wondered aloud. As if in response to her question, the surface beneath her gloved hand shimmered subtly. A seam appeared where none had been visible before, and a portion of the hull slid smoothly aside, revealing a dark chamber beyond. It just opened," Ju reported, startled. "I didn't do anything." "Fall back," Captain Minho ordered immediately. "We need to." "Wait," Ji-yoon interrupted. "I'm detecting an atmosphere forming inside the chamber. The ship is activating environmental systems." The 3 astronauts watched in amazement as soft blue lighting gradually illuminated the chamber from within. It was indeed an airlock, but far more advanced than any human design. Captain Minho's voice was tight with tension. "Lieutenant Park, this is against protocol, but we need to know what we're dealing with. Take your team inside, but be ready to evacuate at the first sign of trouble." "Understood, sir," Ju replied. She led her team into the airlock, which sealed behind them with the same silent efficiency with which it had opened. Inside, the ship was a marvel of engineering. Corridors that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Rooms that appeared larger inside than their external dimensions should allow. Materials that felt both solid and somehow fluid under their touch. "The artificial gravity is perfect," Sung-hoon noted as they removed their helmets after confirming the atmosphere was breathable. "No fluctuations, no gradient. Even our best systems have variations." They moved deeper into the vessel, documenting everything with their suit cameras. They found what appeared to be living quarters, though the furniture and facilities were clearly designed for human-like bodies. "This doesn't make sense," Ji-yoon said. "If aliens built this, why would everything be sized for humans?" The bridge, when they finally found it, was the most perplexing of all. Control interfaces that seemed designed specifically for human hands. Displays with characters that, while initially unfamiliar, began to resolve into recognizable patterns the longer they looked at them. It's adapting to us, Sun Moon realized. The ship is learning our language in real time. As if triggered by his understanding, the main view screen on the bridge flickered to life. Lines of text appeared, forming and reforming as the ship refined its translation. Temporal displacement as UCCE as FUL. Systems in STNDBY mode. Awaiting authorized command PRSONAL. Welcome, Lieutenant JIWO Park. Juwu froze. How does it know my name? My rank. Before anyone could respond, a holographic projection appeared in the center of the bridge. A detailed three-dimensional star map of human-controlled space, but with additions and alterations that made no sense. Colonies on worlds humans had not yet reached. Military outposts in systems that were currently unexplored. And something else. A projection of another fleet, massive and clearly hostile, approaching from a direction where no known civilization existed. Captain, Juwu called through the comm, her voice shaking slightly. You need to see this. Within hours, the Discovery's entire command staff had boarded the mysterious vessel. Captain Minho stood on the bridge, his face grim as he studied the star map and the other data the ship had begun to freely provide. These technical specifications, the Discovery's chief engineer said, scrolling through schematics on a display. This ship has faster-than-light capabilities that make our jump drives look like stone wheels. Weapons systems operating on principles I can't even begin to understand. And the whole material, it's a programmable matter matrix that can self-repair and reconfigure. The real question, Security Chief Junho Kim said, is who built it and why is it here? As if in answer, another holographic display activated, showing what appeared to be a historical timeline. It began with the current date and extended forward almost 30 years. Key events were highlighted: diplomatic meetings, military engagements, scientific breakthroughs, and eventually, a massive conflict labeled simply the Fall. This ship, Captain Minho said slowly, I think it's from our future. As the implications sank in, another system activated on the bridge. A recorded message began to play, showing an older woman in what appeared to be a Confederation admiral's uniform, an uniform design slightly different from the current version. To whoever finds this vessel, the woman said, her voice steady despite the evident exhaustion in her eyes, you are humanity's last hope. My name is Admiral Juwu Park, and I've sent this ship back through time to prevent the extinction of our species. The younger Juwu stared at the image of her future self, unable to speak as the recording continued. They are coming, the Admiral said. And without this technology, we cannot stop them. Learn it, master it, and be ready. The message ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Captain Minho was the first to recover. Lieutenant Park, he said quietly, it seems you have a very important destiny. Juwu looked around at the impossible ship, a vessel so advanced it shouldn't exist yet, and understood that everything had just changed. Not just for her, but for all of humanity. The engineering bay of the mysterious warship hummed with energy that made the hair on Taehyun Kim's arms stand up. 2 weeks had passed since the discovery of the vessel, now code-named Paradox by the Confederation officials. As chief engineer of the analysis team, Taehyun had barely slept, driven by both professional fascination and growing unease. This shouldn't be possible, he muttered, running his scanner over a section of exposed circuitry. The metal-like material seemed to shift subtly under his gaze, almost as if it were breathing. Beside him, Mina Choi adjusted her glasses and peered at her tablet. According to these readings, this single power node contains enough energy to run the entire Confederation fleet for a month. But there's no radiation, no heat signature. It defies every law of thermodynamics we know. The room they worked in was cavernous, with curved walls that seemed to change color depending on the angle from which they were viewed. Dozens of engineers and scientists moved about, documenting and analyzing every centimeter of the ship's systems. Military personnel stood guard at the entrances, a reminder of how valuable and potentially dangerous the paradox was considered. Taehyun laid his tools down and straightened his back, wincing at the stiffness. "Have you noticed something odd about the interior spaces?" Mina looked up. "You mean how rooms seem bigger inside than they should be?" "Exactly. I've mapped the engineering section 3 times now. Each time, the dimensions are slightly different. It's as if the ship is rearranging itself." A young engineer named Shunho approached them, his face pale with excitement or fear. Taehyun couldn't tell which. "Dr. Kim, you need to see this. We've opened access to what appears to be the main propulsion chamber." The 3 of them walked through corridors that curved in ways that felt subtly wrong, as if the straightest path between 2 points was no longer a straight line. Other team members nodded respectfully as they passed. In just 2 weeks, Taehyun had become the unofficial authority on the ship's technology, though he would be the first to admit how little he truly understood. They entered a massive spherical chamber that seemed to exist at the heart of the ship. In the center, suspended in an invisible force field, was what appeared to be a small black sphere about the size of a basketball. "Is that the engine?" Mina asked, squinting at the object. "We believe so," Junho replied. "But it's unlike any propulsion system on record. It doesn't burn fuel. It doesn't create exhaust. According to our instruments, well, this sounds crazy, but it appears to fold space around itself." Taehyun approached the sphere cautiously. As he got closer, he felt a strange sensation, as if gravity itself was bending around him. "It's creating its own space-time geometry," he said slowly. "This isn't just advanced technology. It's rewriting physics as we understand it." A military officer entered the chamber, moving with the purposeful stride of someone carrying important news. "Dr. Kim, the ship's computer systems have begun responding to our queries. Director Song requests your presence on the bridge immediately." The bridge of the paradox had transformed over the past weeks. What had once been mysterious, inactive consoles now glowed with life. Holographic displays hovered in the air, showing ship schematics, star maps, and streams of data in a written language that seemed to shift between alien symbols and recognizable Korean characters. Director Jin Hee-song, the scientist appointed by the Confederation to oversee the research, greeted Taehyun with visible excitement. "We've had a breakthrough," she said. "The ship's AI has established a rudimentary communication channel. It's been teaching us how to understand its systems." "An AI?" Taehyun asked, surprised. "We didn't detect any central processing unit or—" "That's because it's not like our AI systems," interrupted Hyoshin Yu, the computer specialist. "It appears to be integrated throughout the entire ship. The hull, the circuitry, even the atmosphere regulation systems, they're all part of a single, massive distributed intelligence." Hyoshin gestured to a holographic display where complex schematics rotated slowly. "And here's the truly mind-boggling part. The system appears to be partially organic in nature." "Organic?" Taehyun stepped closer to the display. "You mean biological?" "I mean the division between mechanical and biological components doesn't exist in this technology. It's as if someone found a way to grow circuits from living tissue, or perhaps infuse mechanical components with biological properties." Director Song cleared her throat. "The AI has provided us with this, what appears to be a basic technical manual for the ship's primary systems." The holographic display changed to show what looked like an instruction guide, but unlike any Taehyun had ever seen. Instead of step-by-step procedures, it seemed to describe principles, fundamental concepts that underpinned how the technology functioned. "This isn't telling us how to operate the ship," Taehyun realized. "It's teaching us how to think differently about physics, energy, and matter." As the engineering team studied the manual, something unexpected happened. The text began to adapt, changing based on their reactions and questions, as if tailoring itself to their level of understanding. "It's responding to our comprehension," Mina whispered. "It's teaching us, like a good professor would." Over the next several hours, The engineering team learned more about advanced physics than humanity had discovered in the previous century. The ship's manual explained concepts that made quantum mechanics seem simplistic by comparison. Ideas about dimensional folding, time-space manipulation, and energy states that existed between matter and energy. This weapon system, Tae-hyun said, pointing to a schematic, it doesn't fire projectiles or energy beams. It temporarily alters the probability state of targeted matter. Meaning what? Asked one of the military observers. Meaning it can essentially suggest to enemy ships that their hulls were always meant to have holes in them, and reality briefly agrees, Minna explained, her voice filled with wonder and horror. As the day progressed, Tae-hyun found himself drawn to a section of the manual that described the ship's construction process. What he read made him sit down hard in a nearby chair. "Director," he said, his voice strained. According to this, the paradox wasn't built in the conventional sense. It was grown, over decades, using a combination of self-replicating nanomechanes and genetically engineered metamaterials. Grown, Director Song repeated, like a living organism. More like a coral reef, but with purpose and direction. The manual suggests that the ship is, in a very real sense, alive. Not conscious in the way we are, but aware on some fundamental level. A silence fell over the bridge as the implications sank in. "There's something else," Tae-hyun continued, scrolling through the data. The date of the ship's birth, for lack of a better term. According to this, construction began 20 years from now. Later that night, alone in his temporary quarters aboard the Paradox, Tae-hyun struggled to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, equations and impossible concepts danced behind his eyelids. Technology that could fold space, materials that could think, energy systems that defied conservation laws. He was startled by a soft chime from his tablet. Opening it, he found a message that hadn't come through the regular communication channels. The text was simple. "The knowledge you seek is dangerous, but necessary. Humanity's survival depends on understanding what I am. Begin with the quantum resonance chamber on Deck 7. There is something there you need to see." The message was unsigned, but Tae-hyun knew immediately who, or what, had sent it. The ship was reaching out to him directly. Jio Kang pressed his palm against the smooth surface of what the team had identified as the ship's primary data core. The young communications specialist had been working around the clock for 3 days straight, trying to decipher the strange bursts of code that kept emerging from the Paradox's systems. Dark circles underlined his eyes, and his normally neat uniform looked slept in. "Anything new?" asked Eun-ji Lim, sliding a cup of coffee across the workstation. As the team's cryptanalyst, she had been partnering with Jiho since they discovered the first encrypted signals buried in the ship's communications array. Jiho took a grateful sip of the coffee. "It's like trying to have a conversation with someone who keeps changing languages mid-sentence. The encryption protocols shift every few hours, but there's definitely a pattern." The room they worked in was nestled deep within the mysterious vessel. Unlike the engineering sections with their imposing machinery or the bridge with its dramatic holographic displays, the communications hub was almost austere. Curved walls of matte black material surrounding a central pillar that pulsed with soft blue light. Workstations positioned around the pillar displayed cascading streams of symbols and code. "I think it's testing us," Yunji said, twirling a stylus between her fingers. "Giving us increasingly complex puzzles to see if we're smart enough to understand the real message." "If that's true, we're failing the test," Jiho sighed. Director Song is getting impatient. The military representatives are pushing for faster results. Eun-ji lowered her voice. "You've heard the rumors, right? About what they found in the weapons bay." Jiho nodded grimly. The previous day, technicians had activated what appeared to be a targeting system. It had immediately identified every Confederation defense platform, classified military installation, and hidden strategic resource within 50 light years, including sites that were supposed to be completely undetectable. The ship knew everything about them, which raised uncomfortable questions about who had built it and why. "We need a breakthrough," Joe muttered, turning back to his screen. He began running another decryption algorithm on the latest data packet. Suddenly, the blue light in the central pillar pulsed more intensely. All around the room, screens flickered and changed. The streams of incomprehensible code vanished, replaced by a single message in perfect, clear Korean. "Access is guaranteed. Welcome. Communications Specialist, JIHOKANG." Joe froze, his fingers hovering above his keyboard. "Did you do that?" he asked Yoonji, who shook her head, looking equally stunned. "I think the ship just recognized you," she whispered. Before Joe could respond, the screens changed again. Data began to pour across them. Star charts, technical schematics, military analyses. The information was presented in neatly organized folders and files, as if someone had prepared a comprehensive briefing package. "It's giving us everything," Yoonji said, her eyes wide as she scrolled through the files. Ship capabilities, tactical assessments, intelligence reports on. "Wait, what is this?" She had opened a file containing detailed information about a species called the Archelians, comprehensive biological data, cultural analyses, military capabilities, and planetary locations. The problem was, humanity had never encountered any alien civilization called the Archelians. According to this, Geo said, reading over her shoulder, first contact with the Archelian Dominion is scheduled to occur 16 months from now, when one of our deep space exploration vessels encounters their forward scout ship near the Ta City system. "There's something else," Taehyun continued, scrolling through the data. "The date of the ship's birth, for lack of a better term. According to this, construction began 20 years from now." Later that night, alone in his temporary quarters aboard the Paradox, Taehyun struggled to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, equations and impossible concepts danced behind his eyelids. Technology that could fold space, materials that could think, energy systems that defied conservation laws. He was startled by a soft chime from his tablet. Opening it, he found a message that hadn't come through the regular communication channels. The text was simple. "The knowledge you seek is dangerous, but necessary. Humanity's survival depends on understanding what I am. Begin with the quantum resonance chamber on Deck 7. There is something there you need to see." The message was unsigned, but Taehyun knew immediately who, or what, had sent it. The ship was reaching out to him directly. Jio Kang pressed his palm against the smooth surface of what the team had identified as the ship's primary data core. The young communications specialist had been working around the clock for 3 days straight, trying to decipher the strange bursts of code that kept emerging from the Paradox's systems. Dark circles underlined his eyes, and his normally neat uniform looked slept in. "Anything new?" asked Eunji Lim, sliding a cup of coffee across the workstation. As the team's cryptanalyst, she had been partnering with Jiho since they discovered the first encrypted signals buried in the ship's communications array. Jiho took a grateful sip of the coffee. "It's like trying to have a conversation with someone who keeps changing languages mid-sentence. The encryption protocols shift every few hours, but there's definitely a pattern." The room they worked in was nestled deep within the mysterious vessel. Unlike the engineering sections with their imposing machinery or the bridge with its dramatic holographic displays, the communications hub was almost austere. Curved walls of matte black material surrounding a central pillar that pulsed with soft blue light. Workstations positioned around the pillar displayed cascading streams of symbols and code. "I think it's testing us," Yoonji said, twirling a stylus between her fingers. "Giving us increasingly complex puzzles to see if we're smart enough to understand the real message." "If that's true, we're failing the test," Jio sighed. Director Song is getting impatient. The military representatives are pushing for faster results. Yoonjae lowered her voice. "You've heard the rumors, right? About what they found in the weapons bay?" Jiho nodded grimly. The previous day, technicians had activated what appeared to be a targeting system. It had immediately identified every Confederation defense platform, classified military installation, and hidden strategic resource within 50 light-years, including sites that were supposed to be completely undetectable. The ship knew everything about them, which raised uncomfortable questions about who had built it and why. "We need a breakthrough," Joe muttered, turning back to his screen. He began running another decryption algorithm on the latest data packet. Suddenly, the blue light in the central pillar pulsed more intensely. All around the room, screens flickered and changed. The streams of incomprehensible code vanished, replaced by a single message in perfect, clear Korean. "Access granted. Welcome. Communications Specialist, Jiho Kang." Jiho froze, his fingers hovering above his keyboard. "Did you do that?" he asked Yoonji, who shook her head, looking equally stunned. "I think the ship just recognized you," she whispered. Before Jiho could respond, the screens changed again. Data began to pour across them. Star charts, technical schematics, military analyses. The information was presented in neatly organized folders and files, as if someone had prepared a comprehensive briefing package. "It's giving us everything," Yoonji said, her eyes wide as she scrolled through the files. "Ship capabilities, tactical assessments, intelligence reports on..." "Wait, what is this?" She had opened a file containing detailed information about a species called the Arkelians, comprehensive biological data, cultural analyses, military capabilities, and planetary locations. The problem was, humanity had never encountered any alien civilization called the Arkelians. According to this, Jiho said, reading over her shoulder, first contact with the Arkelian Dominion is scheduled to occur 16 months from now, when one of our deep space exploration vessels encounters their forward scout ship near the Ta City system. They stared at each other, the implications sinking in. If this data was accurate, the Paradox wasn't just a ship from the future. It was carrying detailed intelligence about events that hadn't happened yet. "We need to call Director Song," Yoonji said, reaching for the communication panel. Before she could activate it, the screens changed again. A new file appeared, marked with a simple label, Time Sensitive, Priority Alpha. Jiho hesitated only briefly before opening it. Inside was a video file. When he played it, the image of a middle-aged man in an admiral's uniform appeared. His face was haggard, with a long scar running from his left temple to his jaw. Behind him, alert sirens flashed silently. "This message is encoded specifically for the first Discovery team," the man said, his voice steady despite the chaos visible in the background. "My name is Admiral Junho Lee, Chief of Confederation Defense. Date stamped July 15, 2053. If you're seeing this, then the Paradox has successfully navigated the temporal fold and reached your time." Yoonji gasped. The current year was 2028. The message was coming from someone 25 years in the future. "I'll be direct," Admiral Lee continued. "Our civilization is facing extinction. The war with the Arkelian Dominion has gone catastrophically wrong. Their biogenic weapons have reduced Earth's population by 60%. Our colonies are falling one by one. This ship, the Paradox, represents our last hope." The Admiral's image was replaced by technical schematics and strategic analyses. "We've loaded this vessel with everything you need: advanced technology, tactical information, and most crucially, a complete understanding of Arkelian biology, culture, and psychology. With this knowledge, you can pursue a different path than we did. Perhaps peaceful contact, perhaps controlled military deterrence, but whatever you choose, you must be prepared." The Admiral's face returned, now closer to the camera. "There is, however, a price for this knowledge. The temporal mechanics that allow this ship to exist in your time are complicated. Paradox is aptly named. By sending it back, we've created a new timeline branch. Your future is no longer constrained to become our present, but the ship itself exists in a state of temporal flux. It requires specific individuals to operate, individuals whose temporal signatures are woven into its very fabric. A list of names appeared beside the Admiral, with Jiho's prominently displayed, along with others he recognized from the research team. Ta-Hyun Kim, Ju Park, Yoonji Lim, and several more. You are not merely the Discovery team, Admiral Lee said gravely. You are the designated crew. The Paradox has chosen you because in our timeline, you were its builders, its designers, its commanders. The ship recognizes your genetic code, your brainwave patterns, because in a very real sense, it knows you better than you know yourselves. Jiho and Yoonji looked at each other, speechless. Finally, the Admiral concluded, there is an encryption key embedded in this message. It will unlock the ship's full capabilities when the time is right. That time will be determined by the ship itself, based on its ongoing analysis of your timeline's development. Trust the Paradox. It was built by the best of humanity. By you, to save humanity. The message ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. After several long moments, Yoonji found her voice. We need to tell the others. Jiho nodded slowly, still processing the implications, not just about the message, about everything. The Arkelians, the war, the fact that apparently we're all destined to build this ship in some alternate future. As they gathered their data tablets to leave, all the screens in the room suddenly displayed a new message. Temporal ANOMALYDT RRKELIN Scout Vessel 8P Poro Ching HAUCETI ESTI Matedi Arrival 72 HODURS Tiny Line Acceleration in Piro Juriest. That's not possible, Yoonji whispered. The message said first contact was 16 months away. Jiho stared at the screen, a chill running down his spine. Unless something's changed. Unless our discovery of the Paradox has already altered the timeline. The blue light in the central pillar pulsed once, twice, 3 times, almost like a heartbeat. The ship was trying to tell them something. Their future had arrived early. The Confederation Council chamber had never felt so tense. 17 of the most powerful people in human space sat around the oval table, their faces illuminated by the harsh light from above. At the head of the table, President Minho Ryu rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the decision before them. Let me understand this clearly, he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. This ship, this Paradox, is from our own future. A future where we are losing a war against an alien race we haven't even met yet. And now you're telling me this first contact has been moved up by over a year. Director Jin Hee-song nodded. Yes, Mr. President. Our deep space monitoring stations confirmed it 3 hours ago. An unknown vessel matching the Arkelian signatures from the Paradox database has entered the TOF CD system. It's moving cautiously, but its trajectory suggests it's conducting a systematic survey. The defense minister, a stern woman named Sujin Kwon, leaned forward. We've quietly dispatched the cruiser Dauntless to observe from a distance. They have strict orders not to engage or reveal themselves. Around the table, council members exchanged worried glances. The information downloaded from the Paradox had been distributed among them, and each had spent the past 48 hours reviewing the future that might await humanity. What are our options? Asked the science minister, an elderly man who had spent his career advocating for peaceful exploration. Admiral Hyun-Soo Lee, the highest-ranking military officer present, activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A 3-dimensional image of the Paradox appeared, rotating slowly. Option 1. We use the Paradox as intended. The ship's systems are nearly operational, and according to Dr. Kim, it has gradually been teaching our engineers how to control its advanced technology. We could deploy it immediately as a show of force, and risk starting the very war we're trying to prevent, interrupted the Commerce Minister. Admiral Lee continued without acknowledging the comment. Option 2. We use the intelligence gathered from the paradox to prepare our defenses and establish diplomatic protocols specifically tailored to Arkelian psychology. We approach first contact cautiously, from a position of knowledge if not strength. Auction 3, said Foreign Minister Ji Hai-shin quietly. We destroy the paradox now. If its existence has already altered our timeline by accelerating first contact, who knows what other unintended consequences it might cause? Perhaps the safest course is to remove the temporal anomaly entirely. A heavy silence fell over the room. The implications of each choice were staggering. President Ryu turned to a young woman sitting slightly apart from the main table. Lieutenant Park, you've had the most direct interaction with the ship. What's your assessment? Ju Park straightened in her chair, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. Since the discovery, she had spent more time aboard the paradox than anyone else, drawn to it by an inexplicable connection she was only beginning to understand. Mr. President, Council members, she began, choosing her words carefully. The paradox is not merely a weapon or a repository of information. It appears to possess a kind of awareness. It's been selecting specific individuals from our teams, granting them deeper access to its systems. Myself, Dr. Kim, Communications Specialist Kang, Cryptanalyst Lim, and others. It's as if the ship recognizes us. Recognizes you how? The science minister asked, leaning forward with interest. According to the message received by Specialist Kang, in the timeline where the paradox originated, we were its creators, its crew. Ju paused, letting that sink in. I believe the ship was designed to find us specifically, to help us avoid the mistakes of that other timeline. Defense Minister Kwan scoffed. You're suggesting we base our entire strategic response on the notion that this vessel has some mystical connection to a handful of our personnel. I'm suggesting, Ju replied calmly, that the paradox itself may be the key to understanding our best path forward. It didn't just bring us technology and intelligence. It brought us specific warnings about decisions that led to war. President Ryu nodded thoughtfully. What does the ship tell us about first contact with the Arkelians? In the original timeline, was it peaceful? Director Song consulted her tablet. Initially, yes. According to the historical data, the first meeting was cautious but cordial. Relations deteriorated over the following decade due to resource competitions in shared border systems, cultural misunderstandings, and a series of escalating military incidents. So war wasn't inevitable, the foreign minister noted. It was the result of specific choices. Choices we can now avoid, Ju added. The paradox has provided detailed analyses of Arkelian culture, biology, and psychology. Their concept of honor, their communication patterns, even their sensory perceptions differ from ours in ways that led to critical misunderstandings. The Council digested this information in silence. Finally, Admiral Lee spoke again. There's another factor to consider. The paradox's weapon systems are beyond anything we've ever developed. If we chose to use the ship aggressively, we could potentially eliminate the Arkelian threat before it ever materializes. Or ensure that war becomes inevitable, countered the science minister. If our first action upon meeting a new species is overwhelming military aggression, how would that shape all our future encounters? The debate continued for hours, growing increasingly heated. Some council members argued for immediate military preparation, others for diplomatic initiatives based on the paradox's cultural intelligence. The most cautious voices still advocated for destroying the ship entirely, fearing its temporal influence more than any alien threat. Throughout the arguments, Ju remained silent, watching the holographic image of the paradox rotate slowly above the table. Something about the ship called to her, a connection she couldn't explain but felt with absolute certainty. When the council took a brief recess, she slipped away to a private communication terminal and contacted the research team still aboard the mysterious vessel. Taehyun, she said when the engineer's face appeared on the screen, has there been any change in the ship's status? Dr. Kim looked exhausted but excited. Actually, yes. About 20 minutes ago, new systems began coming online automatically. Jiho says the communication array is preparing for a transmission, though he can't determine the target yet. Juwu felt a chill. The council hasn't made any decisions yet. Why would the ship be activating now? I don't know, but there's something else. Taehyun lowered his voice. The main computer displayed a message addressed specifically to you. It says, "Time grows short. The decision is yours, Captain Park." Captain? Juwu repeated, confused. I'm a lieutenant. Not according to the paradox, Taehyun replied. Juwu, I think the ship is expecting you to take command. When Juwu returned to the council chamber, the debate had devolved into circular arguments. President Ryu looked increasingly frustrated as ministers talked over each other, proposing ever more complex plans. Mr. President, Juwu said during a momentary lull, her voice stronger than she had intended. I need to share something with the council. All eyes turned to her as she described the ship's recent activation and the message addressed to her. It seems the paradox has its own timeline, she concluded, and it's running out. President Ryu studied her face carefully. What are you suggesting, Lieutenant? Juwu took a deep breath. I'm suggesting that the ship chose us for a reason. Me, Dr. Kim, Specialist Kang, and the others. If the paradox was sent back to find specific individuals, perhaps it's because we're meant to make this decision, not a council. The room erupted in outrage. Defense Minister Kwon was particularly vocal. This is absurd. You're proposing that a handful of junior officers and civilian scientists should determine the future of human-Arkelian relations based on a message from a ship that shouldn't even exist. I'm proposing, Juwu replied steadily, that perhaps the lesson of the paradox isn't about technology or tactical advantages. Perhaps it's about trust. About believing that our future selves knew exactly what they were doing when they sent this ship to find us. President Ryu raised his hand for silence. Lieutenant Park, what exactly are you asking for? Juwu squared her shoulders. Permission to take the designated team aboard the Paradox and make contact with the Arkelian scout ship using the protocols and knowledge provided by the ship itself. The request hung in the air like a physical thing. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, from an unexpected quarter, came support. Admiral Lee nodded slowly. The Paradox clearly has capabilities we don't fully understand. If it's chosen specific people to interface with its systems, perhaps we should trust its judgment. President Ryu closed his eyes briefly, weighing the options. When he opened them, his decision was made. Lieutenant Park, you have 48 hours to prepare your team. The Paradox is yours to command. Juwu Park stood on the bridge of the Paradox, her hands resting lightly on the command console. The ship hummed beneath her feet, a living thing eager for action after its long sleep. Through the main viewport, the stars looked oddly bright, as if she were seeing them with new eyes. Captain, Taehyun called from the engineering station, still stumbling over her new rank. All systems are online. The temporal drive is stabilized. Juwu nodded, feeling strangely calm despite the enormity of what they were about to attempt. In the 36 hours since President Ryu had given them control of the Paradox, the ship had transformed from a mysterious artifact to a fully operational warship. It had guided them through its systems with patient instruction, teaching them to operate technology that shouldn't exist for decades. Jiho, open a channel to the Dauntless, she ordered. Let's inform Admiral Choi we're ready to proceed. The young communications specialist worked his console with growing confidence. Channel open, Captain. Admiral Dongwen Choi's weathered face appeared on the main screen. He had been skeptical of their mission at first, but the Paradox's capabilities had gradually won his respect. Lieutenant, excuse me, Captain Park, he corrected himself. The Arkelian vessel has maintained its position at the edge of the Ta-CD system. Our sensors indicate they've detected the Dauntless, but they've made no aggressive moves. Are you certain this is the best approach? Juwu glanced at Yunji, who nodded encouragingly from the tactical station. The Paradox's data is clear, Admiral, the Arkelians respect strength, but are suspicious of deception. A direct approach with a clear display of our capabilities will establish the right tone for first contact. Very well. The Admiral didn't look entirely convinced. The Dauntless will maintain position as ordered. Good luck, Captain Park. For all our sakes. As the communication ended, Ju turned to her impromptu crew. 6 individuals chosen by the paradox itself. None had held command positions before. None had trained for first contact protocols. Yet somehow, standing at their stations on this impossible ship, they looked as if they had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. Navigation. Ju said to Min Seo-yoon, a former shuttle pilot who had been working as a technician on the Discovery when the paradox was found. Take us into the Tav City system. Direct approach to the Arkelian vessel. 1/4 power. 1/4 power, Min-seo replied, her fingers dancing across controls that had been incomprehensible 2 days ago. The paradox moved with impossible grace. There was no sensation of acceleration, no vibration or thrust. One moment they were near Earth. The next, they were streaking through space faster than any human vessel had ever traveled. Arrival in 3 minutes, Min-seo reported. The Arkelian ship has detected us. They're powering weapon systems. Ju felt a momentary doubt. The intelligence from the future had outlined this moment in detail, but now that it was happening, the stakes seemed overwhelming. One mistake could start the very war they were trying to prevent. Defensive systems online, Yoonji reported calmly, but inactive as instructed. Open a channel when we're in range, Ju ordered. Prepare the greeting sequence exactly as programmed. The paradox slowed as it approached the Arkelian scout ship, a sleek, bronze-colored vessel with what appeared to be organic components integrated into its metallic hull. It was beautiful in an alien way, with flowing lines and structures that served purposes human engineers couldn't begin to guess. We're in position, Min-seo announced. 500 kilometers separation. Their weapons are fully charged, Yoonji added. Multiple targeting systems locked on us. Ju took a deep breath. Jiho, begin transmission. The message they sent was unlike any first contact protocol in human history. Based on the paradox's detailed knowledge of Arkelian culture, it began with a mathematical sequence establishing intelligence, followed by a specific pattern of light pulses that, according to the ship's database, would be recognized as a formal greeting in the Arkelian honor tradition. For nearly a minute, there was no response. The Arkelian ship remained motionless, weapons ready. Then suddenly, a return signal flashed across Jiho's console. They're responding. The pattern matches what the paradox predicted. It's a formal acknowledgement. Tension on the bridge eased slightly. The first hurdle had been cleared. Move to Phase 2, Ju ordered. The paradox transmitted a series of images and symbols carefully designed to establish peaceful intent, while simultaneously demonstrating technological sophistication. It was a delicate balance, showing enough strength to command respect without appearing threatening. This time, the Arkelian response came more quickly. A similar series of images, but with subtle variations that Jiho quickly identified thanks to the ship's translating systems. They're curious, he reported. They're asking who we are and how we know their greeting protocols. Ju nodded. This was the critical moment. Send the proposed response. The message they transmitted explained, in carefully constructed Arkelian symbolism, that humans were peaceful explorers who had studied many cultures. It was a half-truth at best, but the paradox's data suggested that a full explanation of time travel would be culturally incomprehensible to Arkelians at first contact. Minutes passed as they waited for a response. On the tactical display, Yoonji noted that the Arkelian weapons remained active, but their targeting systems had been recalibrated to a lower threat assessment. Finally, a new message appeared, more complex than before, with rich imagery and what appeared to be actual language samples. Jiho worked with the translation system, his expression growing excited. They're inviting a direct communication. They want to establish a visual link. This was moving faster than the paradox had predicted. Ju hesitated, then made a decision. Accept the invitation. Let's see who we're talking to. The main view screen shifted, and for the first time, humans looked upon an Arkelian face. The alien had a smoothly ridged cranium with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its skin was a pale copper color that seemed to shift subtly with its breathing. When it spoke, a resonant voice emerged that the paradox translated with only a slight delay. I am Scout Commander Zarthex of the Arkelian Dominion. Your method of approach is unknown to us, as is your vessel's configuration. Explain your presence and intentions. Ju stepped forward, letting the alien see her clearly. I am Captain Ju Park of Earth. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and mutual understanding. The Arkelian's 4 eyes blinked in an alternating pattern that the paradox's database identified as indicating surprise. Your ship's capabilities exceed known technological parameters for your species. Our intelligence suggested humans had not yet achieved effective interstellar travel. We are full of surprises, Ju replied with a small smile, following the script provided by the ship, as I'm sure you are as well. What followed was a careful dance of diplomacy, with the paradox's knowledge guiding Ju through the complex nuances of Arkelian communication. She knew when to project strength, when to offer respect, when to express curiosity. Each response seemed to intrigue the alien commander further. After nearly an hour, Zarthex made an unexpected proposal. Captain Park, I suggest a direct meeting. My vessel can accommodate your atmospheric requirements. Will you accept this invitation in the spirit of knowledge exchange? The paradox had not predicted this development so early in the contact process. Ju glanced at her crew, seeing both excitement and concern on their faces. The ship's suggesting caution, Taeyun said quietly, reading data from his console. But it's not advising against it. Ju made her decision. Commander Zarthex, I would be honored to meet with you. Such an exchange would benefit both our peoples. As preparations began for the historic face-to-face meeting, Ju retreated to the captain's ready room for a moment of quiet reflection. On the desk was a small data crystal the paradox had produced when they first took command. She activated it, and a holographic message appeared. The same message from Admiral Janoli they had seen before, but with an additional segment clearly meant for her eyes only. Captain Park, the future admiral said, looking tired but satisfied. If you're seeing this, then first contact with the Arkelians is proceeding differently than in our timeline. Good. Every deviation increases the possibility of avoiding war. The admiral's image leaned closer. The paradox has one final secret, which will unlock when the time is right. Trust your instincts. Trust your crew. And remember, you're not just changing history, you're creating it. The message ended, leaving Ju with a strange sense of completion. The paradox hadn't just been sent back to warn them about a war. It had been sent to find her, to put her in this exact position at this exact moment. As she returned to the bridge to prepare for humanity's first face-to-face meeting with an alien species, Ju felt the weight of 2 timelines on her shoulders, the one that had led to war, and the new one they were creating with each decision. The circle was closing, but unlike the timeline that had sent the paradox back, their future remained unwritten. Retroclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.